What is going on, everyone? It is me, Lone Vault Wanderer, and at E3 this year, of course, Assassin's Creed was revealed by Ubisoft in their infamous press conference at this stage. People think that it was a fantastic press conference, and one of the highlights was Assassin's Creed Origins. It's probably going to go down in history as the most leaked game ever. I mean, leading up to that announcement, there were leaks every single day. It was pretty hilarious, to be honest, but regardless, the game does look solid. It looks absolutely beautiful, the setting looks awesome, the combat looks fun, and I've been keeping a close eye on different pieces of news with regards to Origins over the past couple of days, because one, I wanted to try and make a video on it, but I thought there's just too much information out there about Origins for me to do anything kind of comprehensive about the game. So what I do want to cover is that there's been a number of different articles with regards to Origins that talk about how the game is pretty much just, you know, completely upended past Assassin's Creed games, and it's really rebuilding the franchise from the ground up for the first time in a very long time. And I think this is all very good because you know as well as I know, every time there's a new Assassin's Creed, before Origins, of course, people are complaining that there are bugs, that there are issues, and that, you know, it's just the same game as the previous Assassin's Creed. And we probably haven't seen a true innovation maybe since Black Flag. But the tone of the media this time around is completely different. It seems like the year that Ubisoft took off to work on Assassin's Creed and to really make it a great game has paid off. And there are 3 articles that I'm going to be highlighting, all of which are linked in the description below. But essentially, collectively, they talk about different things that Ubisoft has changed with regards to Assassin's Creed that severely improved Origins, and therefore making it look like to be a fantastic game, or at least a good game at best. So, what are those 3 things? Well, Game Debate talks about overhauling the game's quest system and exploration. Then you've got Kotaku talking about the new mission system, sounding like a much-needed change. And then finally, XboxAchievements.com talks about how the combat is fundamentally improved in Assassin's Creed Origins, based on a demo by the author of that article. So, I want to go through each of those just to talk through a little bit about, you know, these massive changes that allegedly Assassin's Creed Origins has made, because it's all looking promising. It really is. So let's start with the quest system and exploration. So Game Debate states that having taken a year off, Assassin's Creed Origins was supposed to be all about ringing the changes. Aside from the fantastic looking new environment, the gameplay demo shown during Ubisoft's E3 press conference looked suspiciously familiar. Now Ubisoft is looking to get down to the nuts and bolts of what makes AC Origins different to its predecessors, beginning with the total revamping of all of its side content. I like this. For many Assassin's Creed players, the constant varying collectibles and checklists of things to do proved overly monotonous by the time AC Unity arrived. Assassin's Creed Origins looks to be changing all of that with its optional side content, with game director Ashraf Ismail claiming that the aim with AC Origins is to encourage exploration and reward discovery. To that end, when you send your eagle soaring up into the sky to hit up synchronization points, it won't fill in detail on every map. Anything contained within the Fog of War, areas you haven't traveled to yet, will have its landmarks tagged with question marks. You'll have to physically go there to uncover what's actually happening, which, combined with the removal of the minimap, Ubisoft hopes, and I'm sorry, I think there are errors in this sentence here, will encourage the player to learn the environment they're inhabiting rather than blindly following a hovering waypoint. So, I love this. I absolutely do love this. Now, first of all, I hope they don't get rid of the minimap completely. Like, as default, get rid of it, fine, but I don't want that thing to go away, because even though I get it, you know, no minimap, it encourages exploration, it's more immersive, etc., it's still helpful and it's still a game in the first place. I think that's something that I would still like the option to have and to use, just in case the game doesn't do a good enough job in terms of exploration and the world, and in case it's just a bit too confusing. But that aside, I love the fact that you can't just go to a big tower, climb it, and unlock all areas of the map. Now, there still seems to be a synchronization system, but from what I'm reading, after you send your eagle up to unlock some of that area of the map, there are still a bunch of question marks that the only way you can discover what they are is by walking to them and unlocking them. That's my understanding. And I certainly do prefer this over the climb big towers and unlock certain areas of the map dynamic. I like the idea of you actually having to go to a point, forcing you to explore and actually physically walk there. That's fantastic. That I really think is going to encourage exploration, and it works well with the seemingly beautiful landscape and setting of Assassin's Creed Origins in ancient Egypt, which just looks phenomenal, guys. It really looks beautiful, especially that 4K gameplay demo. So let's go on to the mission structure and the Kotaku article. The article states that at E3 in Los Angeles last month, there were several obvious points of distinction between Assassin's Creed Origins and the 10 or so major Assassin's Creed games before it. It'll be the first AC in ancient Egypt, the first with stargazing puzzles and swimming hippos. Lovely. One thing I heard about but didn't see, however, seems the most franchise shaking. The innovation I'm talking about involves a combination of the game's new quest structure and its artificial intelligence. It results in missions that involve players doing Assassin's Creed things and interacting in signature Assassin's Creed ways with characters who don't sit still like they did in older games. In a change for the series, many non-player characters in this new late October game will move through the game world like clockwork. Quote, "We developed this new technology to be able to populate thousands of human, NPC, and animals that have a life, have a persistency, that have schedules, that have places to go, places to eat, go to the bathroom, work," the game's creative director Ashraf Ismail explained at a showcase hosted by Ubisoft as about a dozen people played the E3 build of the game in the room behind him. This sounds beautiful. Because this world is so beautiful and because it looks so lush and lively, the fact that people in the game are going to actually act like people in the real world, I think is going to be a nice touch. If it's done right. You mean, if it's just the same, you know, the person gets up and goes to work and always walks along the same path and always says the same things and there's no real, you know, variation in that regard, eventually I could see that getting a bit boring, right? We need a bit of spontaneity, but I think, you know, the premise of this is good, the idea is good, it's all about the execution. And it certainly sounds a lot better than every time you go into a city, the people are the exact same, they're doing the same thing, they're saying the exact same thing. You know, this actually makes it seem like ancient Egypt and AC Origins is going to be a lively, vivid place, if you will. So that's looking promising. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's executed. And finally, Xbox achievements talking about the combat. So it says, again, you know, Assassin's Creed is a remarkably different game to what Syndicate was. A lot of that stuff as well. And they continue that the most interesting thing that we observed with the game in our hands-on is how the game immediately forces you to ditch the muscle memory that a decade's worth of Assassin's Creed has synced in with your DNA. Think of the new combat as a super light Dark Souls. There's a heavy and a light attack you can use with each weapon type. There are a lot, and the core of the fight is your footwork, spacing, and dodging. Light attacks change into combos, and once you're locked onto an enemy, you have that nice off-center Dark Souls style camera that allows you to figure out who you're battling and how much of an immediate threat they are. You can parry once you've got your shield equipped, and from what we can discern, each enemy weapon type has different windows and different reactions once you parry. And they continue by saying that this all makes for a much more exciting fighting system. So, one thing, I do like the fact that there's going to be more weapons. You know, we need more weapons. He's a damn assassin, for God's sake. He's not going to be using one blade forever, or just a set of routine weapons. Tying it back to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it's in my mind. That game has so many different weapons, and it forces you and it encourages you to use all those different weapons because they're breakable. I'm not saying that Assassin's Creed weapons need to be breakable, not at all, but the fact is, if it has a lot of different weapons, a lot of different, you know, bows and arrow types and swords and maybe even hidden blades, whatever it is, encourage us to use different weapons. Let's mix the combat up every now and again. I don't just want to use a sword and just constantly hack and slash at enemies, because it gets boring, it gets mundane, it gets monotonous. It really does. I'm hoping that there is a lot of new weapons, and this revamped combat system does sound interesting. Now, I don't necessarily know, okay, this is the one reservation I have, I don't necessarily know how I feel about it being kind of like Dark Souls. I don't know exactly how much it is like Dark Souls. I mean, the author of this article described it as a super light Dark Souls, whatever that means. But I'm going to hold my breath on that because I don't know how big of a fan I am of Dark Souls combat. I've played it a little bit, and from my very small experience, and yes, it's a very small experience, so please don't get too angry with me, but Dark Souls combat is stiff, it's rigid, it's kind of, I won't call it clunky, but it's not free-flowing. And when it's an Assassin's Creed game, I expect my assassin to be fast, to be quick, agile. I know that Dark Souls, you know, has, you know, dashes and you can jump out of the way and stuff like that. But from my experiences of it, and again, very small experiences, and I could be talking out of my ass here. If I am, please correct me. If you've played a lot of Dark Souls, let me know. But from my experiences, that game is much more slower moving. and I would like my assassin to be faster and more agile. But with that being said, you know, people are, not just this author, but also others that have written about AC Origins, are talking highly about the combat. So I'm going to bite my tongue, hopefully that it's good. I'm just really liking the fact that there's going to be more weapons. So anyways, Waysanders, I'd love to get your thoughts about all the topics I talked about in this video. Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.